Hi, I just got back from watching Late Night with the Devil, and this is going to be my attempt at speedrunning explaining the movie. I've only seen it once this past time within the hour, so a lot of stuff may be left out, and there's going to be hella spoilers, but I really want to talk about this movie. I loved it. So, it is set in the 70s talk show. Very groovy, very sexy. I love it. And our antagonist, well, not if, I guess, I say antagonist because towards the end of the movie there's stuff, blah. But our host, our gracious, beautiful host, is named Jack Delroy. He's a young, up-and-coming man in the 70s talk show circuit, but unfortunately it is the 70s, so the king of talk shows at the time was Johnny Carson. And it was very funny that Johnny Carson tends to, like, at the very beginning of the movie, it seems as though they have some rivalry, but I'm assuming Johnny is not very aware of it because he was the god of talk shows at the time. So in the vein of trying to keep up with ratings and trying to maybe reach the tops of like Carson's way, it becomes more of a gimmicky show. Delroy's bringing on paranormal psychics, people with weird jobs such as like a tarantula lady, and it slowly becomes trash TV, with it resulting in him kind of trying to be more vulnerable, bringing in his dying wife of cancer. They had a kind of just like a little chat on the stage. Beautiful ratings, bonanza, people loved it, but it was sad because she did die about 2 weeks after the broadcast. So in the vein of him still trying to keep up with things, Halloween is up, and Halloween happens to fall during Sweeps Week. And if you are in movies or theater, I guess that's a thing, or not even theater, talk shows. Basically, this is a time where they're going to be really focusing on ratings and essentially, are you going to get renewed or not? So in him trying to kind of reach godlike tier that is Johnny Carson talk show, he decides Halloween's the time for him to kind of bring out a gimmick. And the gimmick is essentially a young lady who is possessed and her handler essentially, and a man who claims that he is a medium. And it's essentially just a hodgepodge of rating stuff. Like it's a cheap ploy. And you know, as people do in TV, you're only doing it for the ratings. So starts off, we have Mr. Jack Delroy and also our resident skeptic, Carmichael something or another, Heeg or Haig or something. That character is 100% supposed to be James Randi, the paranormal debunker researcher who at a time was offering $1 million to anyone that could prove they had any paranormal ability or could prove a paranormal phenomenon without like Randy being to debunk it. That never occurred. He has passed, and that $1 million has not been taken. So Carr serves as a skeptic. He is offering $100,000 to the other guest, who happens to be named Cristo. And Cristo is your typical medium on TV. It's like, you know, slightly racist vibes. He's from another country. He has a like accent. But he starts to flounder when he's trying to pick up on people in the crowd. He's like, oh, I'm hearing voices, and lands on two ladies and basically fumbles to saying, hey, your dead son loves you still. And of course, Carr, who is the skeptic, is like, dude, you know, I could probably disprove what you're doing right now. And they butt heads, as one would do with a skeptic and someone who's claiming to have a skill. Eventually, they kind of come to blows in a way. And when I say blows, more like blows chunks, because Cristo, out of the blue, he starts to receive this giant brain blast headache from some character called Minnie that causes him to pretty much like throw up his soul. Throws up black goo. He's taken off the stage. Carmichael's kind of annoyed because he didn't get vomit on his shirt, but he's like, what a charlatan. I know what that's about. He's just regurgitating. So he doesn't think it's real, but it is shaking up Jack because Minnie, the name that he kept saying, was the pet name of Jack's deceased wife. So Jack is slowly getting nervous. He's still, you know, he has a hand in some of the stuff that's happening. Obviously, they know that they got to make it worth the while for the audience. But he starts to feel a little weird. So Cristo is taken off backstage, and our next guests are coming up, and Carr is foaming at the mouth to just disprove that these people just suck. In come Dr. June and Lily. Dr. June and Lily so Lily was a part of a cult. She's 13 years old. The cult ended up going out a la Waco. I was about to say Branch Davidians, they're the same thing. Waco, Heaven's Gate. Basically, a Satanist cult killed themselves. She was a lone survivor. She was taken in by Dr. June, who was a paranormal psychologist who wanted to know what's going on, how this girl's living, because it turns out there's a demon that lives in Lily. Lily is adorable. Also, I'm talking really fast and my mouth is dry. Told you I was going to speed run this. Back. Lily is adorable, but she's also very creepy. When she comes on the stage, she has this fixation on the cameras, smiling, looking at him, and Jack's like, hey, you don't have to look at the camera. She's like, oh, cool. As they go on, Dr. June is trying to convince Jack that doing an on-air possession, which was the game plan initially, probably shouldn't happen, because Lily has been displaying some not so cool, moments of fugue and anger and saying things, and she brought up your name and da-da-da-da. So Dr. June doesn't want this to happen. However, it's sweeps week. So Jack is like, yeah, but we're still gonna do it anyway. So they go on stage. Carr is trying to be as cordial as anyone with his facial hair could be, and basically tries to shit on both Dr. June and Lily. So they do a demonstration. In a demonstration, Dr. June puts Lily under some type of hypnosis because she has to be asleep for this entity to come up. Initially, they were like, it's the devil, but it turns out it's like abracadabrazar or some shit like that. I don't know. It's not the devil. And turns out it's real because the thing manifests and completely changes the voice, the appearance of poor Lily. And it even points out that he knows Jack, because it turns out that Jack, being a man in the 70s or any man in power at the time, has been shimmering shoulders with the freaks over at Bohemian Grove, or the equivalent of Bohemian Grove. And this is actually brought up beginning of the movie because people are like, you're part of the weirdos that go hang out in the forest. Why aren't you rich and cool? Why aren't you as successful? And he's like, you're kind of overemphasizing their ability to help people. Well, turns out they are out there doing sacrificial shit, and it's connected with the cult that Lily was rescued from. So the demon starts talking to Jack. He's like, it's nice to see you, Jack. And Jack is shook, because he's like, I didn't plan this. We were just gonna have some smoke machines and light. What is this? Carr is not amused. In fact, he's like, I am going to debunk this right now. June is able to bring back Lily because she starts to levitate and freaked out, and they're like, oh my God, it's so sad. Little break. During the break, Carr connects with the two people at the front of the audience who were the ones that said, oh my God, Christo did connect me with my lost son. He died. And basically, through just asking questions, he finds out that these two women had to fill out a form and were asked a lot of questions by someone on the cast. This happens at almost every faith healing church you've ever been to. If you watch anything on TV where it's like, oh, you're talking about my Mima. It's like, because you wrote your Mima's name on a paper. So that's basically what he's trying to prove. He's like, you were asked about this before. You probably forgot about it because it's an emotional situation. Deuces, I have my proof. So next session, Carr wants to prove that what they just did, the whole levitating and stuff, was purely hypnosis. So he takes the reluctant Gus, who I have not brought up until now, but he is the co-host of Nighthawks or whatever the fuck. Wait, that's for American Dad. He's the co-host. Anyway, he's like, I'd prefer not, but sure, whatever. They sit in front of the audience like Dr. June and Lily did, and Carr, in his sophisticated manner with his nifty little watch, manages to hypnotize not only Gus, but Jack, I was about to say Jack and Diane, Jack, Dr. June, and Lily, and pretty much the entire audience, and I'm assuming us, the audience watching the movie, because we saw what we saw. During this time, he's plucking out worms, and he's like, oh God, there's worms coming out of you, freaking Gus out. Gus is pretty much unzipping his stuff and screaming because there's fucking worms. There weren't worms. Dr. Carr, not Dr. Carr, he's not a doctor. Carr, he was like, yeah, I hypnotized literally everyone. And they're like, no, you didn't, because we saw the worms. So they rewatched the tape back, and they clearly show that Carr hypnotized everyone, and everything they saw did not exist on the tape because it was hypnosis. And Carr's like, and that's what happened when Lily and Dr. June were up here, y'all. She got in your fucking head. So Lily, being the very astute young lady she is, said, hey, play our tape then. You know, the one where I just literally was possessed and I started floating and freaked people out. And they're like, oh, actually, you're right, let's do that. So they do it. And nothing changed. She still floated. She still named Jack. She still acted crazy. Her body was different. She sounded different. Nothing changed. Now that freaks out Carr, because Carr's like, if this was some form of a trick of light or whatever, you would be able to see the difference in the video. Well, all hell breaks loose basically. And it was starting to break loose because turns out Christo, the initial charlatan, has passed away. He died on his way to the hospital. Nobody knew this besides Jack. Gus found out somehow and told Carr, and that freaks him out. He's like, oh, I thought that was a show. He threw up. It sucked. I thought, you're going to pay my bill. No, turns out he actually died. And that kind of erupts to this bigger thing where Lily, not prompted by Dr. June and her hypnosis, becomes like possessed. She's like, I'm Abracazar, or whatever his name is. And slowly, she starts to kill everyone, as one does when they are possessed by a demon. But Jack is able to be kind of let out by his producer from the back. And it falls into this kind of dreamlike state where he's revisiting some of his old sets and his old shows, but he's acutely aware that this is not happening. It then slowly starts to get into cult vibes. You start seeing the visions of like owls and other animals and people from the audience. And in comes this demon priest who died with all the other occultists. Basically, he's like, hey, yeah, crazy show. That was us. Which I'm like, okay, well, great. That sucks for Jack. So Jack turns around, and before him, he sees his dying wife. She's already dead now, but she's dying. And he's sad. And she says, I didn't think they were going to let me see you. This is the cost of, like, you wanting to have so much power and so much fame. A sacrifice had to happen, and I happen to be the sacrifice. That sucks. I'm dying. This sucks. So as he's crying and I guess trying to feel some cathartic need to have some apologies, his wife beckons over to a conveniently placed, like, a sacrificial dagger. And she's like, you know what to do. And he stabs her. Well, he didn't stab her because she's already dead. He's actually stabbing Lily. And then we branch back to the original show. Everyone's dead. He's stabbing Lily. He stops. He's like, oh, what? And then he starts to repeat the phrase like dreamer, awake here, or something like that. It was the same phrase that Carr used to wake up Gus. And then we pan out, and that's the end. Yeah. Let me know if I missed a lot, because I probably did, because I didn't speak about the fact that Jack and Dr. June apparently were having an affair or were sleeping with each other. I don't know. I didn't think it was important, actually, because it didn't really make sense or any change to the actual plot. So yes, that was my speed run of explaining that movie. I like it. I'm going to give it... Gross. That was a burps cough. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10, only because I saw the trailer of that movie about 2 weeks ago, and it immediately intrigued me. I thought that perhaps we were going to get more in depth with Jack's connection to the cult, because in the trailer, we don't really know that there's a cult. Like, that's good. I'm glad that they saved that for last. Like, hey, that was a bit. But I wish we had more information. Like, did he not know that? What did he do in the woods? Like, what is going on? But maybe it's meant to be ambiguous, because the entire movie is not like a retrospect of, and he learned from this. It's truly just the entire episode. Like, the first half explains who Jack is, the guy, and then the rest is just the episode and cuts in between. So I guess there wasn't really necessarily a need or time to explain his connection, and we were just able to peruse what we got from the story. But yeah, 8 out of 10. Speed run.